Having a fast, responsive gaming keyboard is a make or break in high levels of competitive play. To help you secure victory, we found and reviewed the 5 fastest gaming keyboards available on the market in 2022. Links for all of the keyboards mentioned in this video will be in the description box below. Number 5. The fastest keyboard under $100. Before we get to anything to do with specs or performance, there's one big factor that's going to recommend the Pulsar Nova Optical Pro. It's the first and last ultra-fast keyboard on this list that retails for less than $100. That leads to some simplicity of design, but surprisingly few sacrifices in terms of performance. The Pulsar Nova Optical Pro uses almost entirely plastic and rubber construction, which has allowed the manufacturer Pulsar gaming gears to make this a waterproof mechanical keyboard, which is another huge selling point right there. Additionally, it uses clicky blue optical mechanical switches to achieve a high level of performance and comfort. In terms of performance, the keyboard sports 1000 Hz polling rate, meaning that it scans the keyboard for input at a base rate of once per millisecond. This is extremely fast, but still 8 times slower than the #1 keyboard in this video, so stay tuned. Now, thanks to the optical switches, the keyboard has a latency of only 0.2 milliseconds, making this a very attainable option for both casual and competitive gamers. As far as features of this keyboard, the most notable is the per-key RGB lighting. It isn't very bright, but shines through the caps very well. The LEDs are addressable from the keyboard itself if you need to adjust brightness or switch between pre-programmed cycles. But for the most part, to adjust the lighting, you'll want to use the control software. Besides that, there aren't very many features. There's no wrist rest, dedicated macro or media keys, and nothing that would make this keyboard stand out, except the waterproofness we mentioned earlier. However, a lot of customization is available to you via the software. Things like remapping keys, creating macros and profiles, and adjusting the speed and lighting patterns are all possible with the software. Overall, the Pulsar Nova Optical Pro is currently the cheapest way to get a well-performing optical keyboard. Despite the price, it's still an extremely fast keyboard that won't hold you back while you compete. Number 4. Affordable ultra-fast gaming keyboard. Construction-wise, the Omen Sequencer has an anodized aluminum body and uses optical mechanical blue switches. It's a level of construction quality that you could expect to find from a lot of premium gaming brands, just without the premium price tag. Similar to the Nova, the keyboard features a 1000 Hz polling rate, which is for now the industry standard. It'll be interesting to see how quickly the 4000 to 8000 Hz keyboards catch on. But we expect that 1000 Hz keyboards, especially ones with very low latency, will remain competitive for at least a couple more years. The difference between those higher polling rates and the 1000 Hz standard might seem astronomical, but in reality, we're talking about a difference of fractions of a millisecond. Among the standard keyboards, the difference in latency is going to be much more noticeable and makes the 0.2 milliseconds available from the HP Omen Sequencer that much more impressive. This low latency is going to be especially useful in fast-paced local games, not so much in online gaming. HP has made some interesting choices when it comes to the keys. They've fallen into using the same oversized blocky gamer font that companies use when they first start making gaming equipment. The spacebar is also twice as wide as it needs to be, and extends half that width below the row of keys. It's very satisfying to hit, but there's not much practical justification for it. On the other hand, you get some very useful features, like 5 programmable macro keys and a very prominent tactile volume control wheel. Individually, the keys are sturdy with good feedback, but very loud. The per-key RGB lighting isn't as bright as you'd see on a dedicated gaming brand, but it's there and still allows for some cool programming effects with HP Command Center. Unlike some other premium keyboards, there's no RGB lighting along the sides, as well as no wrist rest, which keeps the price at an affordable level. Overall, the HP Omen Sequencer is in the awkward position of performing like a premium gaming keyboard, but not quite looking like one. With that being said, it's still one of the fastest gaming keyboards in 2022. And if you're looking for speed and don't care about extra fancy features, this seems like a good option. Once you sit down and put it through its paces on the game of your choice, you can't really find fault with it. And for a difference of $50 to $100 compared to the premium brands, it's a good value. Number 3. A surprising contender from Evga. If you're familiar with Evga, it's probably because you bought or at least priced out some of their components. They haven't done a lot in terms of gaming peripherals until now, but they came out swinging with the Z20. It's rare that a company's first outing will be this strong, especially on something that can be as fiddly and subjective as a keyboard. The Z20 uses a mixed construction for the case, unlike the aluminum you'll see on the Razer and Corsair flagships, so it doesn't feel quite as sturdy. That can make it a bit harder to justify paying the MSRP and setting it as the center of your desktop. The keyboard uses Lightstrike LK optical mechanical switches from Bloody, and the outsourcing to a more established brand explains why the Z20 is an early success from EVGA. The EVGA is one of only a very small number of keyboards in 2022 that offers a polling rate above the previous standard of 1000 Hz. However, the 4000 Hz polling rate available from the EVGA isn't quite as fast as the industry-leading 8000 Hz available from the Razer and Corsair. Further, the latency also tests at a level that's only going to really come into play for extremely high-level gaming performance. With a response time of 0.25 milliseconds, which is on par with the Corsair K100, you'll get instantaneous results, allowing you to stay at the absolute cutting edge of competitive performance. The Z20 is available with both linear and clicky switches, but this review is only concerning the linear model. The keys have very little wobble, especially on the larger keys that use stabilizers, but are overall fairly quiet considering the materials at play. The feedback isn't as firm, but it has a decent bounce. EVGA chose a cartoonish gamer font for the keys, and the finish collects fingerprints and finger oils very quickly. But those are the only major issues. Similar to Corsair's K100, you get 5 macro keys along the left edge of the keyboard that can be programmed using the keyboard software and a set of dedicated media keys. Now, the per-key lighting is toward the top half of each key, which isn't a big deal on single-function keys, but you'll notice a definite difference in brightness along your number row. Other than that, the lighting is good. Plus, the keyboard even has 2 RGB bars along the sides for added underglow lighting. There's not as much customization as you'd get with a Corsair keyboard, but that's not saying a lot. EVGA also equipped the keyboard with what they call a time-of-flight sensor, essentially a proximity sensor that can be used to wake up your computer as you approach, or trigger different lighting effects, which is actually a really cool feature. Overall, given that this is one of only a couple of EVGA's keyboards, we'd call it a success. It's an incredibly fast keyboard with some unique features you won't find anywhere else. Plus, there isn't anything we'd call a real drawback. Number 2. Our recommendation for an ultra-fast premium keyboard. The K100 from Corsair is a fantastic keyboard, and the fact that Corsair was in a position to be the first company to launch a keyboard with a higher than 1000 Hz polling rate speaks to the quality of design that you're getting from them. Like most premium gaming keyboards, the Corsair K100 uses optical mechanical switches. Corsair has their own brand of OPX RGB-enabled switches that they've used here, and they deliver both solid experience and a high level of responsiveness with a 1mm actuation point. As we've mentioned, the Corsair was the first to market with a greater than 1 kHz polling rate, and the 4000 Hz, 8000 Hz after firmware update polling available from the K100 is going to make for an incredibly responsive gaming experience, especially if you play fast-paced competitive games where every millisecond counts. As far as latency, the Corsair K100 offers an impressive 0.25 millisecond latency, which is 0.05 milliseconds slower than the fastest keyboards offer. More than any other brand, Corsair is synonymous with RGB lighting, and they pulled out all the stops with the K100. Of course, you get the per-key RGB lighting, but there are also 44 lighting zones and 23 layers of hardware lighting available. This can be controlled to an extent with the multifunction IQ wheel at the top of the keyboard, but with the sheer amount of customization available, the IQ wheel and even the lighting control software can start to feel inadequate for the task. For most users, the multifunction wheel is going to get more use as a media control tool. That, coupled with a volume control and tempered glass display panel, makes this feel really sleek and modern. Corsair has also included 5 programmable macro keys down the left side of the keyboard. This makes the keyboard larger and can take some getting used to, but unlocks a ton of extra functionality once you've got them set up. The keys themselves have a bit more rattle than we saw with what it clearly considers its closest competitor, the Huntsman V2, and they only come in a linear version. The keys have a good bounce, and with a 1mm actuation point, feel incredibly responsive. Along with the Huntsman V2, The Corsair K100 is currently the fastest gaming keyboard available on the market. It's a bit more expensive than the Huntsman V2, but the RGB lighting is much better. Plus, you get some extra features in comparison, like the dedicated macro keys and the little display at the top of the keyboard. This is not the fastest gaming keyboard on paper. However, it is our recommendation if you're looking for an ultra-fast premium gaming keyboard. Number 1. The fastest gaming keyboard on the planet. The Huntsman V2 is Razer's update to the Huntsman Elite, which was already an excellent keyboard in its own right. With this new version, Razer made a lot of the upgrades that gamers and keyboard aficionados thought were absent from the original Huntsman, making this a top choice for competitive gamers and currently the fastest gaming keyboard available. The Razer Huntsman V2 is a full keyboard with an aluminum body, second-generation optical switches, and per-key RGB lighting. At a glance, it's everything you'd want from a gaming keyboard. It also includes a magnetic wrist rest with an RGB ring that syncs with the keyboard, making it a more exciting option than the usual almost afterthought quality. On a technical level, the biggest thing that distinguishes the Razer Huntsman V2 is the polling rate. The Huntsman V2 has an astonishing 8,000 Hz polling rate, meaning that it's scanning for signal once every 0.125 milliseconds, or 8 times a millisecond. And in combination with a 0.2 millisecond latency, the Huntsman V2 makes for an incredibly responsive keyboard. Keep in mind though, this isn't a huge difference you'll notice as a gamer, especially because of internet latency. However, if you want the fastest keyboard, nothing currently beats the Huntsman V2 in terms of how quickly the keyboard registers and sends signals to your PC. In terms of the typing and gaming experience, the switches are a lot sturdier than in previous iterations of the keyboard. There's very little rattle or wiggle, and you get incredibly satisfying feedback if you opt for the clicky optical switches. Not only do these optical switches perform incredibly well, they also sound and feel extremely satisfying. Furthermore, the default keycaps are fairly slim, which will again come down to preference to decide whether that's a selling point. They don't let a lot of light through, so you'll be getting fairly intense light spilling around the keys, but not a lot of per-key illumination. That's a bit of a letdown considering how well known Razer is for the lighting on their peripherals. If you've got some money to spare, consider swapping out the keycaps for something brighter and more fun. Overall, the Razer Huntsman is an outstanding piece of hardware and currently the fastest gaming keyboard on the market. In addition to this performance, it offers excellent build quality, top-of-the-line optical switches, and lots of customization and extra features. However, you probably guessed this as soon as you saw the Razer logo. The Huntsman V2 isn't cheap. It feels worth it in terms of user experience, and it's the perfect way to round out a premium gaming build. But it's not your only choice. There you go. These were the 5 fastest gaming keyboards available on the market in 2022. Be sure to check out the description to find the most up-to-date prices of all the products mentioned in this video. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like. If you're new to the channel and like the video, consider subscribing to the channel. We do our best to keep you up to date with the best products on the market. So if you want to stay updated on the best gear, make sure to hit that subscribe button.